What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 291. Can you check that? Is that right? Am I doing the math right on this?
Gosh, 291? 291?
Yeah. Wow.
All right. Wow.
It goes up by one, I guess, every week, and
that checks out.
So
that seems to happen every time.
So much progress.
Yep. My name's Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts. I'm here as always with.
I'm Ron.
And I'm John.
And there's a longer pause in there than usual.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like this time Ronald took a dramatic moment, though. This time
he did.
Yeah. That was my fault.
Did. He tried to set up this dramatic shot on his camera, and he just kind of went with the audio port as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How you guys doing, man? How's it going? How's life?
Good. Lucky.
Good.
Alive. That's, you know.
We're here.
We're lucky.
We're here.
We're lucky.
Lucky, alive,
we have internet
and doing payable work. These are
That's
all things you cannot take for granted in 2021.
You cannot take that for granted. Hope everybody else is doing well. And you know, all the listeners out there.
And Ronald, you're halfway vaccinated. Is that correct? Or did you get the one shot?
Yeah, I'm halfway. I'm taking Pfizer. They don't really tell you till you get there. You know, in fact, when you get the call, you ask and they say they can't tell you, which is really uncomfortable. But getting there, it was cool, man. They tell you to come on time, but I was in the line for like an hour. So I don't know.
So it's in keeping with all medical appointments in that.
Yeah, that's just due diligence to make sure you're not late, but they can be very late.
Right. Was it like Coke and Pepsi at a restaurant where you came in and said, "I'll have the Johnson & Johnson," and they said, "Oh gosh, is Pfizer okay?"
I wish I had a choice. I wish I could just kind of taste test them, you know, just kind of figure it out.
Little drop here and there.
Yes. Oh, this is good. This tastes like baby powder. I don't want the Johnson & Johnson.
That's what I figured. I figured it's got to taste like that or lotion.
But yeah, I'm okay. How you guys? Good?
Yeah, man.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Living the dream.
A lot to talk about. Yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to talk over.
No. Yeah, you're right though. There is a lot to talk about. We got
Jesus.
We're going to talk a little bit of Oscars, a little bit of South by Southwest, which started this week and is happening as we record this. So we're going to I think we discussed like breaking it up over two different podcasts, but we'll talk a little bit today just about our experience so far and maybe a couple of things that we've seen in the first day and a half of the festival. And then the feature conversation today, we're going to be talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League, which came out, if you're listening to this the day this releases, it came out last night on HBO Max. So we'll talk about that towards the end of the podcast. But yeah, let's start a little bit of Oscar talk. A weird year for Oscars, a weird year for movies in general. You know, they changed a lot of stuff through 2020 multiple times in terms of like eligibility dates moving, the broadcast date moving, you know, all these movies that went from theatrical to VOD, you know, they kind of adjusted eligibility rules so certain films could be included. So, you know, trying to be flexible, I guess, in times of a pandemic and try to be as inclusive as possible to movies that, you know, had to push schedules and that were still trying to come out in some sort of 2020 year or some version of it. So yeah, this week this past Monday, very early as always, they announced the Oscar noms. I don't know, just in general, what are you guys thinking? Like anything special about the nominations? Anything stand out to you for the better, for the worse? First impressions. What are we thinking?
I think the first thing I was thinking was, where is the Five Bloods? I know that this movie came out very early in the year, but I mean, this is if there were to ever be a year that Spike Lee should be on the list, it should be this one. This movie was super special. It felt like there was a lot of love in it, and I just don't understand why that wasn't present. So that was my biggest takeaway when I saw Best Picture.
Do you think that's like do you think that is like this conversation that always happens about like when it came out, especially because the eligibility got pushed, you know, 2 months further into the year, quote unquote, you know, like, do you think that kind of hurt it? It seems like it may have, but what do you think?
I think it did, man. Because if you look at all the movies, like The Father, Judas and the Black Messiah, Mank, Minari, Nomadland and Promising Young Woman, those all kind of came at the 6-month mark of 2021, if not later. So, you know, that there's an argument to be made that maybe they should have campaigned for this movie a little later. You know, it's unfortunate. And I feel like, you know, I know that he doesn't need the recognition, but there's been this like renaissance of people being like, oh man, have you seen Spike Lee movies? He's saying a lot. Oh my God, how do we miss this commentary that he's had? And it would be such an amazing icing on a cake to have had, at least to be nominated. Because look, he's competing with some monsters this year. Like, you know, he may not have won, but at least he would have been in a conversation that would have been on the packaging of the movie. It would have been on Netflix to get people excited about it. So it's unfortunate. Yeah.
I think the thing that jumped out at me about the nominations was just the Steven Yeun or Yen aspect of it. Just the fact that, I mean, it's one of those firsts that you're happy to hear about a first, and then you're instantly, you cringe and feel terrible that it's a first. But he's the first Asian American actor nominated in a lead role for Minari, and it's like, I mean, that should have happened a long time ago, but that really stands out to me. And plus, he's one of those actors that it kind of creeps up on me how good he is. He's always good in what I see him in. I was not a big Walking Dead fan. I got kind of tired, particularly of his storyline on that show, like what they did with his character. But you know, like I remember in Sorry to Bother You. What was that thriller he was in where? It was real,
like video game type of one.
No, it was one about like
I
can't believe I'm spacing on the name of it. I'll pull it up.
There was two that came out on. It was The Wailing, and the other one was the one he was in, right?
Yes.
Oh God, what was it called?
It was called Burning.
Burning. Yeah, that's it.
But I mean, he's good. He pops up in different roles, and you realize he's one of those people
really good,
who's known for a particular character, and you see them do other things, and you realize, oh, they really were acting. He's up to more interesting things than this kind of nice guy character that he was on Walking Dead. But no, that stands out to me because he's an actor I like, and like I said, it's just, you know, it doesn't mean that much in the grand scheme of things. There's still so much systemic about Hollywood that has made firsts like that so long coming, if that's a sentence. But you know, it makes you feel good to see. And actually, this year's nominees across the board are pretty interesting in that regard. It's not. I mean, that Oscars so white thing is still a problem, but it's, you know, it seems like they are doing what they can to work against that.
Yeah, it seems like this is maybe the first, and maybe it's a product of, you know, just the amount of movies that came out too, because, you know, they were saying like this was like, I forget how many years, but like more eligible films this year than the past. I don't know if it was 5, 10, maybe more years, you know, just in terms of just pure eligibility. So like, you know, I think that gave an opportunity for a lot of diverse artists, diverse voices, just to kind of be in the mix and be eligible. But yeah, I think that was what really stood out to me, was just like after last year, you know, the Oscars so white controversy, and, you know, besides Parasite really kind of capping off a ceremony with, you know, which was otherwise like, I think it was like 19 of the 20 acting noms were white actresses. And this year it is quite different. And I think it's a lot more representative of the movies and the filmmakers and, you know, just the talent that's out there now making movies, especially like, you know, that can come out over a streaming platform, and qualify. So yeah, you know, Steven Yeun, Riz Ahmed, you know, is like the first Muslim actor. You know, you have 2 women nominated in the directing category for the first time,
which is another
Chloe
crazy
Zhao is a first. You know,
I don't mean it's crazy that they were nominated. I mean, it's another thing that's crazy that they're the first 2 women.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean,
you know?
and I think that it's not that there haven't been films in the past that should have been recognized for a female director, because there absolutely should have been. But I mean, it is like a year where if you look across the board at the movies that just had all the heat, all the traction in these last 4 or 5 months, across the board, it is just representation, diversity, like Asian American, Muslim, you know, Black, like it's just, you know, it's a good thing. Like it's really good to look at the screen when they're showing all these movies and all these actors and actresses and the faces. And you're like, okay, so that looks a lot more representative of this country of people making movies, and just in terms of what's being consumed, like the face of film going is changing, literally, and also just figuratively in terms of how we watch movies, and and our access to movies, I think is another point as well.
Yes.
So I think seeing this, I think it's a great sign. I hope it's not just a one-off. I hope next year it's even more representative. And I mean, I think it's a really good step. And I'll be honest, like, if you're forecasting a lot of these categories, I think, the winning list for this year is going to be quite diverse as well. And that is a really good thing, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, in general, like I'm pretty happy. I mean, there are definitely some ones that fall off that were kind of oddities, like you were mentioning, The Five Bloods is definitely one.
What did it get, score and nothing else that I'm seeing here?
Yeah, I don't see
Terrence Blanchard's score is nominated, but I don't see it anywhere else in the main crush of nominees here. Which is crazy, because you're right, Ronald. That movie, when it came out, it felt like, I remember it was early enough in the year that it felt like kind of a reprieve in a way. Like we were sitting here craving some kind of a big event movie. And I just remember feeling like, I think we talked about how special it was. Like we thought we were getting some kind of deal that we were seeing this epic new Spike Lee movie on a platform at home, like that. That's a bummer. I do think, even on acting, you would expect to see Delroy Lindo in there somewhere.
Yeah. What do you think about Lakeith getting supporting?
Well, he and Daniel Kaluuya both did. I think sometimes they do that in a movie where they're trying to pick the category where they think they have the most of a chance, but also they're trying to own up to the fact that, I mean, it's weird. They seem to play that game sometimes with, is this supporting, is this lead? But it's weird to see them both get it, or maybe it's not weird that they're both considered like supporting performances, but it's really more like two lead performances the way that I see it. But
yeah, the irony is that I think in all the campaigning material, Lakeith was being run as the lead and Daniel as the supporting, which people were saying that seemed reversed after seeing the movie.
Yeah,
right.
And they both end up being in supporting, which
even like Lakeith is on screen more, right? It feels like it's Daniel Kaluuya's movie. Yeah,
and it was weird. Like Lakeith like posted something like when he got the nomination. It was pretty funny. It's like, I don't know what's happening, but I'm okay with it. It's like his post on Instagram or Twitter or wherever, I saw it pop up, like all their reactions. I think that's
his response to everything. Keith Stanfield's general stance is, I don't know what just happened, but I'm okay with it.
He's an interesting guy.
But it'll be interesting. I mean, I think for the most part, there's a lot of representation. And I'll be curious to watch the event and see what they are able to pull off in terms of production. Because I think they're trying to do some sort of like in-person thing, like whether it's outdoors or something. Because I read that they were possibly looking at like an outdoor venue or moving it there. But I don't know if that it's going to happen or not. But I don't know what they'll do in the next, because I think it's April 25th is the air date, so they have a little time. But we'll see. I don't know. We'll see. All right, cool. Let's move on to South by Southwest. Just like Sundance, we were fortunate enough to kind of participate this year. We got two festivals back to back. I think that's called a streak.
We're doing it, man.
These festivals have taken advantage of the Schmovie bump, is what you're saying.
Right. They heard what happened at South by. They heard what happened at Sundance, and they're like, we gotta get it in.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like we were able to kind of get some access as press, reviewing press in most cases, to be able to kind of check out some titles. Like I said earlier at the top of the episode, it just started the day before we're recording this, so there really hasn't been a ton of stuff. I mean, we've all seen quite a bit actually thus far, which is really exciting for all of us. I was excited seeing everything that everybody's seen so far, because we still got a couple of days to go. So I think next episode is going to be pretty fun to talk about. But
yeah,
I don't know. What's your guys' read on South by? Your experience with the festival, getting into screenings, anything you've seen quickly, that you want to drop during this episode that we may not talk more about next week? What's the first impressions, I guess, of South by Southwest 2021?
John, how was your experience so
I
far?
mean, it's just well, you know what? I will make one comment. There's one thing I realize is different about this that is substantially different from the festival experience that I'm used to. Because otherwise, it's just
Okay.
it's very much like the Sundance thing of just, oh, this is really cool. I'm so glad I'm actually getting a chance to attend this festival that I never would have made it to this year.
Yeah.
But I think, and this is a weird thing to bring up at the beginning of this segment, but I did think about you guys because I thought, oh, weird. I now can test a movie out, and if I don't like it, I can just stop playing it. I don't have to walk out and possibly offend the filmmakers or people that are in the room, or even just be the person that gave up on a movie and walked out. I don't like to do that. But I would happily stop one of these things if I was playing something on my screen at home, because, you know, you got your schedule and you got your things all queued up, and you start to, the system is not totally simple, but it's clear enough once you get used to it to see like what's actually available to watch, what's had its moment of being screened, and then after that it's available for a certain amount of time. But like I actually enjoyed that it took a little bit of the pressure off of when a movie would start to kind of lose my interest a little. I wouldn't think like, oh no, I'm stuck in here for another hour and a half. I would be like, oh wait, you know, I can pause it, I can walk around, I can come back, I could stop, I could actually stop now and not have to suffer through this, which again, I know that's a weird thing to bring up. I have not done that. I've finished everything I've watched, but I realized that at one point when I started to wonder about one of my choices, I was like, you know what? I could just stop. Like I looked around the room as though the filmmaker was going to be sitting on my couch over here and notice me walking out. But that I think is the thing that makes it different too, is because they were talking about stuff at home. It is a home viewing experience. You used to have to go and sit and hobnob, and you know, there's a lot of fun associated with festivals that are that's just gone from this experience. I had the luck of attending South by Southwest years ago, 20 years ago, with a short film that I was in, and you know, I'm sure the festival has changed a lot since then. But I think there's a part of me that misses that experience, that notion of being out and about and amongst people, especially if you've got something to show. So I started to think about the filmmakers in that regard. I started to think, oh, it's probably a bummer for these filmmakers that they don't get to experience that festival rush of you know, that you only get when you're in person with people. But on the other hand, it's really cool these movies are out and available, and you know, it's not like passes are cheap, but it's a lot of stuff to watch and a lot of choices.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I noticed as I was looking through this list of films, I think this group of movies is more my wheelhouse, and I think that the last ones were a little bigger. And this is kind of the sweet spot that I kind of love. These like sleeper films that you kind of hear about that you don't get to see. It seems like South by Southwest is emphasizing kind of those films for this festival versus kind of swinging for the fences and giving you something like, you know, like Candyman or something like that, which I would have loved if they would have put in the festival. But
and if it was in person, they would have probably had like a movie like Candyman. Like they're notorious, like they're you know, that's the big buzz at South by is like opening night, Midnight Madness films. Like they always have, you know, one or two of these like huge movies of the year, like kind of like premiere there. So that's kind of missing here. But in general, I kind of agree is that like, you know, it does seem kind of doc heavy, which is fine by me. But I think in general, the biggest differentiator is that, you know, and having never attended South by, I don't have a frame of reference, but like, you know, with the Sundance virtual, like, you know, you were buying tickets for one off, you could, you know, this ties into what you both said basically, but like, you know, you're buying a ticket to a show and you watch it, that's it. Like where, you know, if you're in a situation like John just described, where if you're not really feeling it, you're like, I'm going to probably still finish this because I just paid for this ticket, most likely. You know, where this festival, the way it's laid out is like you're buying some sort of level of a pass, which, you know, and pretty much like gives you unlimited access, at least our access that we were, you know, kindly given. I think they had different levels of it, but I mean, you basically can register for these screenings and like, you know, there's a window once it starts, you can watch it. Most of them are for the run of the fest. Some of them are within, you know, a certain number of hours post debut, but you know, I think, you know, if you really are trying to immerse yourself in a festival, like even this kind of thing virtually, you know, the price per is probably a really good value if you are buying their pass and like just ingesting all of these like shorts. Like I've watched a ton of shorts over the past couple of days. I've watched a couple feature docs. And I think, buying those one-off, it would have been like financially, it'd been like, wow, that was a lot of money.
Right.
And this is still a lot of money, depending on what level pass you buy. But it's like six and one, half dozen the other, just depending on how you really want to experience the festival. Like if you want to just participate, I think the per screening thing probably works better. But I mean, if you really want to be a part of a festival as much as possible, even virtually, this is a really interesting approach. And I think that the platform they've built it on, the app is pretty cool. It's a little glitchy at times, but I mean, I think once you kind of got into the screenings and, whether you're watching it on like your smart TV or your console boxes or whatever, I've had a really great experience so far. With the exception of one film that I registered for and somehow got kicked out of. But for the most part, everything has been pretty easy to watch. And like, the start stop nature, just like the user experience of it has been really great. So yeah, kudos to them for this platform. I think they built it on something called Swap Card, which is like a online kind of technology that a bunch of different sites use. And so far, I think it's really worked in their favor. So far, it's been really good for me. Is there anything like that that you've seen, I guess that you don't maybe think we're going to talk a lot about next week that you wanted to like mention? Any titles that kind of come to mind quickly?
Well, why don't we just say what we've seen first, just to get some names out there, and then we'll see if there's a topic that emerges from that. Because I think you're right that a lot of this, it might be good when we're doing our kind of best of the fest sort of conversation to see what topics really rise to this. But I've seen Sasquatch, which is the first episode of a Duplass Brothers production, but it's actually much more the work of, I'm going to make sure I've got the names of these guys right, Joshua Rofe and David Holthouse. Joshua is the director and David is the investigative journalist at the center of this show. And it seems like a really intriguing show. I mean, now if you're going to do a true crime thing, you got to have an angle on it. And I think this show definitely has an angle on it. So Sasquatch, I watched the first episode of Confronting a Serial Killer, which is another true crime doc series. This is a Joe Berlinger project, and it has to do with journalist Gillian Lauren, who's kind of the lead figure in that. And, that was an interesting show. I also saw The Oxy Kingpins, which is another documentary, which is about the pharmaceutical epidemic and also who all plays a role in making all those OxyContin pills available to people, and how it's not just drug dealers, it's also pharmacists and doctors and pharmaceutical companies. There's a lot of people that are unknowingly allowing this epidemic to take place. I also saw a documentary called The Lost Sons, which is a really kind of interesting character study as much as it is a story. After you guys have seen that, I'll be curious what you think of the ins and outs of that. And I also saw an indie film, a true indie film, to what you were saying, Ronald. This is a small movie that I don't know that I would ever have even known about were it not in a festival. And having seen so many big ticket items or just watching big movies and watching, like, it retrains your brain to watch a truly independent movie sometimes, Yeah. But Potato Dreams of America is sort of a coming of age / comedy / almost experimental thing. Didn't necessarily work for me across the board, but there's a couple of like key moments in there that I feel like people might be talking about this movie maybe in months to come. But those are the ones I saw. What about you, Ronald? I know you probably have seen the most of us. What?
I saw a bunch of shorts. I saw Sisters, Soak. I ran from it and still was in it. Don't Go Telling Your Mama and The Other Morgan. So two of those actually have the same actress in it. I'm pretty sure it's Mary Holland is in two of the shorts. She's a great comedic actress and great in The Other Morgan and Sisters. Absurd. Don't Go Telling Your Mama is a rapper named Topaz Jones has an album coming out, and he did this kind of ABCs of where he is in Texas. So it's like it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool the way he does. It's like a kid's show, like but sprinkled out these cool things about the culture in his area of Texas. I really enjoyed that. And then movies that I saw, or shows / movies: Sasquatch, Kid Candidate, Oxy Kingpin, The End of Us, which is a COVID film about a couple that breaks up right when the lockdown is started, and then kind of talks about their relationship after that. It's interesting, truly indie, and I think it's an actual couple. R hashtag J, which was the Romeo and Juliet.
I thought that was about you. I honestly saw that every time I see R hashtag J, I'm like, what are they doing saying something about Ronald James on their side?
Man, what a weird bit of. Sometimes I feel like some things are so now in the now. I wonder if they'll hold up later. But it's a cool experiment. It's Romeo and Juliet done through technology. So Instagram Live, text messages, FaceTime, all to tell the story of Romeo and Juliet. So if anything, it's worth checking out just off the experiment alone. The WeWork documentary, WeWork or Making and Breaking of a $47 billion unicorn. Really interesting documentary.
Yeah, I got to see that one.
I don't know how much I can watch white dudes just get given lots of money for no apparent reason but being charismatic. It is the most frustrating thing. They're just like, here's $4 billion for you to spend for your life. It's a weird documentary. Clerk, the documentary about Kevin Smith, really cool. I fucking love Kevin Smith. You'll really enjoy it if you've ever seen anything or heard anything about him, or just curious about who he is as a person. Luchadores, which is a documentary about women luchadors. It's a cool story because women luchadors aren't known quite as well as men, and seeing their story and trying to make it in the world, really cool. And then my the one that I'd say was a standout to me was Ninja Baby, which is a Norwegian film about a woman who's in her early 20s, a cartoonist that has a kid, and she refers to the kid as Ninja Baby, and the Ninja Baby kind of manifests itself through a really cool device that they use throughout the film. And that's all I really say, but that's a real standout to me. The humor is kind of what I love. Toilet humor with some touching humor and really smart. Ninja Baby is probably my standout right now. So yeah, that's what I've seen.
Nice.
How about you, Steve?
So yeah, I've seen a bunch of shorts. So just to go through them real quick. So Don't Peek, I checked out, which actually they just announced today when we're recording this that Timur Bekmambetov, the guy who did like Hardcore Henry, and like Wanted, that they picked this up. The short's like a little horror short that they're going to be making into a feature. That's called Don't Peek. I saw Tale Best Forgotten, Plant Heist. Plant Heist is a really cool short doc about basically like this black market that was created off of these succulents that grow native in California, like right on the coastal shore, and just about like how they, like the park rangers and the town really kind of learned about these people that were like literally flying into this town, this coastal town, and stealing like thousands of these plants from their natural habitats, and like kind of what they did to, basically combat that and stop it and basically bring it down to zero. So that was really cool, called Plant Heist. The Thing That Ate the Birds, which is a Gunpowder and Smoke release. That's like the group that did their Ultra label, like they did the 50 States of Fright thing that was on Quibi.
Wow.
That's a short film that I thought was pretty cool. Significant Other, Puss, Joanna's Dead, Flick, Stuffed, and Dale's House were a bunch of shorts. But in terms of features, I've really only checked out a bunch of docs. I saw We Are the 1,000, which was a doc about like the 1,000-member band that basically got together to do like a concert where they did like a Foo Fighters concert, and they got the Foo Fighters out there. Pretty cool doc. Luchadors I saw as well. Kid Candidate I saw as well. WeWork doc I saw as well. Lost Sons I saw as well. And Introducing Selma Blair would be the last one that I saw. I just watched
I saw that as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I have seen quite a bit, actually. I didn't get to see many narratives yet, but I do have some queued up. So definitely looking forward to catching up with them. I would say, like of what I've seen so far, the Selma Blair doc is really it's heartbreaking. It's really hard to watch. I was really interested in the WeWork doc. I feel like it was a little long. I think it's still a work print. But just, I get what you're saying, like why, I'm tired of seeing it as well. But just that story, like just that, especially all of us coming from like a cultural employer like that really has this culture of employees, like you really buy into it. When we all used to work for the fruit stand, like it's kind of wild to watch, people buy into a vision and, really bank on it, and just kind of watch it all implode because of, the driver's greed and selfishness and all that crap. It's just, yeah, they're making a narrative about this, like where I think Jared Leto is playing Adam Newman. So I'm curious to see that as well. Just a fucking wild story.
All these cult things, and we've seen a few of them recently, these cult stories. I may have mentioned this to you guys off mic. I don't think we ever talked about it on the show, but since you brought up the Apple experience, I always think about Apple when I see those people on these docs who are the bought-in people. The people who are like eyes glazed over. Well, he's just wonderful. Everything that he does is great. Well, everything that it's like, well, you just haven't thought how it could. You just haven't seen how it can work for you. And it reminds me of conversations I had with corporate people at Apple, or people just higher up. People who, again, if you've got a really good, high-paying job, maybe it's worth being bought in, I guess. Yeah. But it was very strange to realize sometimes you were talking to somebody who did seem sort of like, oh, you're like a zealot for this company and for this brand, and you're not relating to me as a person. You're like relating to me as a component of the vision, and that's fine. But it's very startling when you realize, like, sometimes it's not to say that there's no there, but that person's not going to reveal that to you. It's like in this moment they're totally bought in. So it's funny that you mentioned that. I always think about that with relation to like those just true believers out there. And the WeWork thing sounds really fascinating to me. And normally I would be annoyed at Jared Leto being cast in something, but that sounds about right for him.
This is like great cast. I mean, I don't know that he really he doesn't really look like Adam Newman much at all. This is like a tall dude, and doesn't really look like him at all.
But it's the quality,
I think the character, the character, just the magnetism and the charisma. I think it's pretty great casting, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, those are the standouts for me so far. So far I've really been into quite a bit of them. But we'll come back next week and talk about some of the real standouts. And between now and then, there'll be probably more news coming out of it. Like Ronald mentioned earlier, like some of these titles are announcing pickups, like the Don't Peek, and I know Discovery Plus is introducing Selma Blair doc. So some of these things are getting announced as these movies premiere as a publicity, thing. So, as they come out over the next couple of days and we get to see the rest of the titles that we plan to see, even in the wake of the festival, I'm sure things will be announced just like it was with Sundance with acquisitions. And, we'll be able to talk hopefully more about that when we bring those movies up next week on the podcast.
I had one little thing I wanted to mention to you guys about this, though, this tilting towards docs. Docs are just easier to put on for whatever reason for me. I think it's because I don't feel like I'm sinking into someone's aesthetic and their world. Whereas if a narrative film doesn't jibe with me, I can sort of pick up on that quickly and go, I don't know if I want to watch this person's idea. But with the documentary, there's always the possibility that, like, well, maybe I just don't like the way this is made, but I like the content. Or maybe I don't like the way this is made, but I like the face on screen or the person who's doing the talking. It's like a lower investment. And I think it can also be a lower, like there's a format and a formula to these things that you can really spot, too. So in some ways, documentaries are, like, less ambitious, but I don't know. It's just something I noticed that it was when I was looking at the movies I had to watch and the ones I actually got into. Probably the one I enjoyed the most may have been Sasquatch, just because, like I said, I'm very fascinated with this world and where it might be going. And then the one narrative film I watched, Potato Dreams of America, it was the toughest watch for me. And it might be because it's kind of herky-jerky stylistically, but I did repeatedly think, like, oh, where am I in this? Versus with the documentaries where, I think Oxy Kingpins could go more in depth and be more broad in its scope, but I also think that it's got a very clear mission of what it's trying to say to you. So I don't know, sometimes these kind of indie docs that are a little simpler, like they tend towards an hour and 20 minutes rather than an hour or 2 hours and 20 minutes, I think there's something about those. They don't have to be as ambitious if they're tackling something I'm interested in, whereas a narrative film almost has to tick more boxes to really blow me away. I don't know, it was just something I noticed. Had you guys noticed that? Or have you felt that tilt towards documentaries? Like, what do you think? Do you think documentaries are easier in a sense, or I don't know, you know what to expect more? I don't know. Kind of.
There's just with some of the movies, it just feels like, man, you need an editor. That's what I've been feeling more than anything in the world. I've never talked like this before, but I think that because we're in such an open market in terms of what goes. I think the kind of, it's not that the quality's bad of these things. It's just like people are accepting things that aren't as sharp. Like I feel like if some of these movies, I'm like, one more editor, one more edit, and this would be perfection. And then, you know, I'm like, I'm watching, I'm like, this is like 20 minutes too long. Somebody could just chop this part off that has nothing to, this is just mountain for 10 minutes. You know, it's just like, so anyway.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Something I've noticed. Yeah.
So when we said we were going to talk about Justice League, I was thinking like, is this going to be like but after seeing it, it's not particularly a longer conversation because it's kind of like it's kind of like the movie we already saw, just stretched out with more scenes dropped in, and then of course there's some crucial differences. But I guess, you know, I haven't done like a point by point comparison between the two. So, and I don't remember the other one like chapter and verse enough to know where all the differences were. So for me, it was a weird kind of deja vu. Talking about Justice League, or watching Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League, as it's being called. It's not being called the Snyder Cut. Yeah. But Zack Snyder's Justice League, or ZSJL, as I've seen it referred to in a lot of social media. You know, this is like something we've talked about a lot on this show. It's been hyped. It's been coming for a long time. It's like it was one of the linchpins of this HBO Max thing. Well,
yes.
You know, I guess we can talk about the whole experience of this weird movie even existing in a minute. But just what are your gut feelings now that you've seen the movie? It's here. You've seen it. It's no longer like this weird myth. It's no longer this weird hashtag. It's a thing you can watch. What did you think, Ronald?
This is not the same movie. I remember seeing the movie in the theater, and I tried to watch the previous one. The theatrical cut. Okay, I'll say the theatrical cut before. This is not the same movie. I know that we like to say like, yeah, sure. It has the bones of the. I'm
talking about the story. It's not the movie. Oh. The movie's very different, but the story is basically the same.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That part is. So, what do I think about the story? I was saying back to what I was saying before. I wasn't saying that it was the same movie stretched out. I was saying it was basically the same story. There wasn't a whole lot more story. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, the first thing I did think was this isn't the same film. I've watched the film recently. It ain't the same film on any level. Is it the same? It's fucking crazy. It makes me feel weird. So like it feels like a fever dream. Like I have a fear about Groundhog's Day thing.
Oh, Groundhog.
I got like a real fear about like perception of time and stuff like that, and situations. And I watched this film, and I kept saying to Aaron, "Was this the film that we saw?" Because I'm starting to feel crazy. Like, surely Joss Whedon's version in this new Zack Snyder cut can't be that different. And it was. And I think that's the first thing I took away from it. Wow.
Well, it's not like there's not a lot of the same shots, though. I mean, it's just it feels different because he's slowing things down and there's more character development and like scenes are there that you might have, maybe if you were a big fan of the last movie, you might have wanted to see some of this stuff filled in. But I was almost surprised how much of it was like, there was a lot of stuff that I thought was Joss Whedon added stuff. A lot of the goofy humor with Flash that I thought was Joss Whedon added stuff that I was surprised to see is almost entirely the same. You know, there's just a couple gags that were different, but
it's like what did Joss add to this?
Right.
If the legend of it all is that, like, you know, he was in the WB stable working on the Batgirl film, and like that's when Jeff Johns brought him over to kind of touch up this movie and to, you know, make it funnier, to make it lighter, to make it more appealing to a mass audience, like after what happened with Avengers and everything. But yeah, in general, like, you know, that's a takeaway from this is that, like, you know, there's a lot of humor in this movie that I think is surprising to a lot of people. That really kind of thought that was, you know, that the presence of that in Justice League that came out in 2017 was like a Joss Whedon thing. And it doesn't seem like it was. It seems like maybe got punched up or maybe got, you know, kind of, you know, just more of it in places. But in general, it just, you know, didn't really work that well. But yeah, I basically agree with Ronald. Like, the story's the same. I think the guts of it kind of fall into place. And I think that's kind of the takeaway from what Joss did to the film when he took over was kind of just like build out certain areas, take out a lot of other stuff. And I mean, there's reports that like
got taken out.
Right. There's reports that like he had cut like 70% of what Zack, like of that movie, you know, of what was done, 70% of it was like redone.
That's insane.
And you know, and that just all cumulatively is just like, this movie is just like a behemoth of reshoots, and you know, in both versions of it, it's just wild to think about what this cast and crew had to go through for both cuts of this film. But yeah, I don't know. It may be the same guts of the story, but I totally agree. I think it's a completely different film as a whole. And I think that, you know, sure, it's too long. You know, it could be cut down way more than it was. But I mean, I don't think it really matters because it's on HBO Max, and you know, it's like, let's just put it all in the kitchen sink, include it. But I don't know. I really liked it. I mean, I thought it was a way better story, or it makes the story way more cohesive, and it's easier to comprehend. Like, there's so much more with characters that you felt were just completely missing from Justice League. And I mean, the real crux of the story, even while it's the same, are these mother boxes that you don't really know anything about, you know, in the original cut of this film, very, very little about, rather. And I think that's probably one of the biggest pieces that gets built out in this movie that is a benefit to it. You know, there's a lot of, you know, in the first hour or so of this movie, 25% of the way into the movie, it's like, you really don't see a whole lot of like the Justice League. You know, these characters, you see a lot of backstory, and you see a lot of, you know, the Amazonians, and like you see a lot of Hippolyta, and it's just, you see a lot of characters that you didn't see. And it's crazy to think of all that was shot, that was just kind of left on the cutting room floor. And now, you know, now it's in this. But yeah, I don't know. In general, I kind of thought it was pretty great, honestly.
Wow. Wow. I was so bored. I was so
I loved
bored.
it, man.
Wow. Okay. I don't even know if there's much sense in me saying much, because I just was so bored by this movie. I was like, I cannot believe this is 4 hours long. It had no reason to be that long. It was so indulgent, and like saying it has more in it that you need. Like, it'd be different if it was broken into like parts that felt like episodes, but it wasn't really. The episodes felt kind of arbitrary when there was like a title card that came up. Yeah, I mean, I was like angry at this movie when I was halfway into it. Yeah, I just was like, what the fuck am I watching this
But
for?
that's not off brand though. I mean, because this whole conversation we've had about this, you've been pretty like against this thing from
Not
the
really
jump,
against
you know?
it. I just didn't think it existed.
I
I didn't think it existed. You know what I mean? Like,
I
don't
think this movie existed. I don't think it existed either.
Right.
Yeah. But I agree with you.
But when in retrospect, and then coming back and watching the second half and thinking about the first half more, I do think it's a better constructed movie than the original, than the one we saw, than the theatrical movie.
Yeah.
And I do think it has more heart, which is weird because, again, people acted
Definitely.
like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Our impression of it's similar to the way people want to credit everything that's funny in Ant-Man to, oh, that must have been in Edgar Wright's storyboards. And you go, well, no, actually, Peyton Reed was responsible for some of that really funny stuff that people know about. And I think people don't think of Zack Snyder as sincere heart guy. And I think this movie has more heart than the Joss Whedon version. The Joss Whedon version started to feel like someone took this movie and like was rather cynical about how they edited it and changed it around.
Right.
Like, this felt so much more heartfelt. I was bored. I did think, why is this like, if it was 3 hours long, I think I would have had like a much better experience with it. But knowing, like, whenever I would pause and be like, wow, I'm not even an hour into this thing yet, and I already feel like they've been giving me too much movie to set stuff up. But, you know, you're right. It is at home. This is kind of for the fans. So, I mean, you know, and again, I consider myself kind of more than just a casual fan of the DC side of things. I think I like Man of Steel better than most people did. I think as much as we ragged on like Batman versus Superman, I think we spent probably just as much time, or at least a certain amount of that conversation, talking about shots we liked, scenes we liked. Zack Snyder is a brilliant visual stylist, and this movie is pretty gorgeous to look at. So that's something I would not take away from it at all. And it's more cohesive in that sense. And even with everything negative I've said about it, it does go a long way towards making it feel like a more valid movie. I think Zack Snyder's theatrical movie wouldn't have been 4 hours. And
absolutely.
I kind of wish we had gotten the 2.5 hour, 2 hour, 45-minute version of what he would have put out in theaters had he been able to finish his vision. Because I just feel like I mean, it's not, I know we're all kind of cooling on Joss Whedon right now, but I think at the time that movie felt weird. It felt like a weird fit. And just looking at the little subtle differences of the things that he injected into it, it's always this sort of like, I don't know, slightly pervy humor. I swear there's a couple of butt shots of Wonder Woman that are in the Joss Whedon version that are not in the Zack Snyder version, and I don't know if that's something they just knew to edit out, or if that's really that Zack Snyder is like a more conscientious storyteller or something. I know that's a crazy thing to say because he's so into excess.
No,
but I don't know. I found myself appreciating Zack Snyder's vision of this on an emotional level more than the Joss Whedon version. But I found myself really almost angry that this movie was being presented to me in this, for fans, stretched out version, and especially when it got to like the 30-minute epilogue that I mean, maybe the worst part of the movie to me is the Jared Leto scene. I don't know what people thought about that. I thought that scene was horrible and unnecessary and really did nothing in a movie where it's like, that's how you end it when there's not going to be a part 2 to this, or when there's not expected to be one. It just felt like a weird way to go. Like, oh, look, we added all this stuff on to the end of the movie that to me just felt like, boy, that was a total add-on, and it dispelled the feeling I had 30 minutes ago when the movie felt like it was wrapping up its story. It kind of felt like instead of having 2 scenes during the credits like a Marvel movie, they said, let's just have 8 scenes at the end. And again, it started to feel like, hey, we're putting everything back in. This is all the stuff we shot. You get Martian Manhunter in a really strange scene and another strange scene. I don't know. It just felt like those excesses really kept me from appreciating what I think is, I'll say the word again, a really sincere attempt to like tell an epic story about these mythic characters. I think, Zack Snyder had something on his mind and was trying to make a movie that kind of stood on its own. I'm almost ashamed that it couldn't have been more propulsive and streamlined for me anyway. So there's my mixed to negative result, I guess.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement. Like, I don't think that this is a movie that would have come out had it been released under Zack Snyder. And I mean, he's notorious for like releasing, director's cuts of his films anyway, Watchmen or BVS, anything like that. So maybe that would have still been something one day. Yeah. And I do think the movie probably could have benefited, like I said before, like from being cut down even to 3 hours. I mean, that's like a pretty big cut. I think there's a lot of scenes in this movie. If I'm, the bad parts of it, I would say there's a lot of scenes that just go on for way too long, like excessive, this visual slow-mo that he loves that looks amazing in certain scenes, but goes on for like far too long in the majority of them. So that's a huge negative for me. Some of the CG still, is unfinished / just doesn't look good.
Yeah.
So that's a thing. If I'm going to knock anything, that's also one for me. I would put in that column.
Like that big battle scene is one where there was some really like unfinished looking characters.
Yeah. And I mean, and it's just like, they announced this and they're like, oh, there's going to be 20 million in reshoots. There's going to be 30. And it's like ends up being like 70, mainly because they shot those scenes and the whole nightmare of it all that you referenced with Jared Leto, for this. Like, that's all, that was shot for this. And I almost feel like that is like a bluff, like calling their bluff, like, is this done? Because I can almost,
you mean seeing them say, let's make more now that people have reacted to this?
Honestly, I mean, it wouldn't shock me. I mean, look what WB is doing. Like, they have these movies that are all these one-offs that don't have anything to do with anything else. And, and maybe these movies don't get made for theatrical. Maybe they get made for, if they do anything with these, maybe they are HBO Max things. I don't know that that'll happen. And from listening to Zack Snyder, in a lot of interviews for this release, it seems like he seems to think that it's done, but it's also just like feeding the frenzy of like, oh man, like what that would have been awesome. I don't know that I agree with that. I don't know that I even like those scenes at the end, but I do think it's a pretty big flex on his part. And in general, we've always talked about, like you said, John, like he's an amazing visual storyteller. And, I'm a big fan of the majority of his movies, in general. So I would not be opposed to seeing him do something more with this. And I really do think that he had a pretty interesting idea of what this 2-part Justice League would have been, because that's the other thing to keep in mind is that, the intention was for these to be 2 different movies, not what we just watched, but this grand story of what would happen with Darkseid and all that stuff was going to be two different films. So that changes a lot of things when it doesn't become that. And, you know, the legend of what happened, you know, in its production is a whole nother podcast. But
also coming after Thanos is another thing that just hurts Darkseid.
Oh, for sure.
As a reveal, like he doesn't have that's a place where like Marvel has this character with a face and a recognizable human presence that you can latch onto. Yeah. And this movie had like a one of the least finished looking effects almost was Darkseid's face. It never felt like it was quite real. I actually thought Steppenwolf looked kind of cool in some scenes, or at least there was something about his design that worked for me visually, even if, as you said, Steve, a lot of the effects in this movie feel like unfinished versions of cool ideas, you know? Which, I don't know. And there's the whole Lord of the Rings sequence in the middle with that battle. Did you guys feel Lord of the Rings vibes when it was like, and then they split the 3 boxes up amongst the 3 tribes? You know, it felt like they were going for that, which again, I think it's kind of neat that Zack Snyder was trying to wedge that in to the middle of a superhero movie. But I guess that kind of ambition is, you know, kind of what bites him on the ass sometimes.
I was also going to say, man, sometimes it feels good to have seen an adult superhero movie, like with cursing and fucks and man, like I'm not gonna ever get that from Marvel, and I'm getting that. I mean, we might get that through Deadpool. There's rumors that that's going to be R-rated, but I like that these films are kind of set in a world where if somebody gets thrown against the wall, there's blood.
Yeah,
you know, I love that. It's just a welcome change, and sometimes I feel like, especially reading some of the reviews I've read, people are so used to what Marvel brings, which is very strong. Obviously, man, it's an incredible culture that they've created. The running 10-year story is like a film achievement that will probably never be done again. But
agreed.
There are things that are different that can counter that energy.
That success doesn't mean that's the right way to do it. It just means it's a good way to do it. Yeah.
Yes. And these one-off movies aren't a terrible idea. I don't want interconnectivity for everything that I watch. I mean, I'm okay with a sequel, you teasing a sequel, but to be like, the arc is going to be 10 years to solve? All right. I mean, I guess.
Well, your heart sinks sometimes when you know you're getting part 1 of 10 or you're getting season 1 of 6. Yeah. You kind of go, really? Absolutely. I just want a story. You know, and that's what I was saying before about Zack Snyder having an idea. His idea about like, okay, these are mythic characters. These are gods. Let's give them all these godlike powers, you know, and then set them up against bigger gods. And guess what? That guy works for a god that's a bigger god. I thought that, you know, I think that is something that, not to say that Marvel doesn't dip their toe into those kind of cosmic waters, their characters just aren't as mythic from the outset, you know, and I think that's the nature of it. And absolutely. It's almost like the difference is what makes them cool. Like I like that Superman is kind of this magical character, you know. I love that, you know, Batman is grounded, and I mean, again, I do think some of those moments, character moments in this movie, are better because this is a more sincere take on it. But there are also moments where characters are just standing around looking cool. Like there's a shot towards the end where the 6 of them are just lined up, and I swear it's like a solid minute just moving down the line, and each one of them kind of makes a face, you know, and then it cuts to another angle, and it's them standing there staring off, and it's like I know their ship's arriving to pick them up or whatever, but it felt like, okay, this is a total Zack Snyder moment. It's like that thing where and Peter Jackson did it in King Kong. The reason that movie is 3.5 hours long or whatever it is because every shot happens 3 times. Every time like a dinosaur jumps down, you get like shomp, shomp, shomp. You get like every shot is like they give you every angle, and I think sometimes movies like this are all about that. They're trying to give you like look at this cool shot we set up. Now let's show it from this side. Now let's fly in from this side. And you kind of alluded to this, Steve. It kind of slows down the momentum, you know, in the middle of stuff that's happening that is kind of interesting sometimes. What did you guys think of the action? I know we said that there's some unfinished action in this, but did you think this movie, I felt like it had a couple of new action scenes in it that were different from
I was going to say, what action? That's the first thing I was going to say. Like, there was action. It was very spread apart. And I kind of wish there was a little more. I wish there was a little more action. That's all. I mean, I thought that the action that happened was great. By the way, like, the idea that, like, Superman is this god, and everybody's like, where is Superman? Like, I don't care about anything else. Where is he? He has shrines. He has, like, it's crazy, but I guess if there were to be a man that existed or a being that existed like that, it would be like that, and he would be the great equalizer. And I did like that when, you know, they did stand a chance, but when Superman came, there's a different feel to his powers. Like he's a god. He can go like this and push you across a football field. You know, I do love that about what he brings to the table and the mythology surrounding him. So, you know, I thought the action was great. And I thought that the one that stood out to me was the Wonder Woman scene. That robbery scene felt
way different.
So different.
Why does she destroy the building after she's effectively dealt with the threat and didn't have to destroy the building? Like,
better question, John. Why not destroy the building?
I just thought that was that's a very un-Wonder Woman thing to do. Is like, let me do some mass destruction. But no, that scene did feel different, and it's like I remember that scene. I remember even beats from that scene in the Whedon version, but this version felt different. It felt grittier and rougher. Actually, Wonder Woman seemed a bit more like she was kicking their asses. But I mean, I remember almost every beat from that scene. It's weird how much of the movie is like that. At least for me, where I'm like, I know I saw this exact exchange before, but it felt different, and maybe had one or two little things added in. I'm trying to remember which action scene would have worked the best for me. I thought that one was kind of fun. That was way better than the scene in Wonder Woman where she takes down the thieves in the mall. You know, this was kind of like a different version of the same scene where she just comes in and quickly dispenses with somebody. That scene was pretty cool. I don't know. I agree with you guys. You know, I love the moment. My favorite moment was in the other one, but it was in this one too, and I was kind of glad to see that it was a Zack invention. Was the moment when Superman recognizes that Flash is moving fast. When they first meet,
oh my God,
Clark, and he's fighting them all, and Flash is running around him, and then Henry Cavill cuts his eyes over.
Yeah, I love it.
And you realize Flash knows that Superman is thinking fast enough that he can tell what he's doing. And then Flash gets this kind of, oh shit, because he's not used to that, you know. That just is, and Henry Cavill plays that moment, because at that moment we're seeing how scary Superman would be if he was fighting you, you know. But kind of something you said, Ronald, I think, you know, in comics, and you probably know this term, overpowered is a term that people use for certain characters. And Superman is overpowered. You have to come up with story reasons why he's not using his power, why he can't use his power, why he's called away. So in some ways, even though this feels weird to have a Justice League movie that is mostly without Superman, it makes sense. Just like knocking out Professor Xavier midway into an X-Men movie makes sense because he can just do whatever you need to do. You know, that overpowered character kind of needs to be held back. I remember there was a season of Deadwood, I think the second season, where Al Swearingen, the kind of guy who secretly runs the town, was down with like a kidney stone or a gallstone, and it was like, why are they doing this? The show comes back for a second season, and then the breakout character is sidelined for like 4 or 5 episodes. But then at the moment when he wakes up and he gets to have this, what the fuck has happened when I was down and you guys were running things, you realize that's the moment that you really need that character. Like, so I think sometimes you need Superman to be out of commission so that when he shows up, it can be like, oh yeah, now the guy who can basically just win things is here. But a story where he's just kicking everybody's ass is kind of, it does make you think a little too much about like, wait, how is Batman even remaining a player amongst all these other people? You know, he's the one guy who's just like, I got a suit. You know, he's got like there's like gods and goddesses and stuff, and he's underpowered in that sense. And I think you would be thinking about his role much more if it's like him alongside Superman fighting. It's like, well, I got a grappling hook. You know, I don't know. I just think that it's a smart move story-wise, even though I know people are complaining. In fact, the people in my house, my son and wife, were both being like, oh, I want more Superman. And I was like, yeah, but if he's here, then it's kind of like game over in a lot of ways.
That's a big thing I thought about. Like, not that necessarily I wanted more of him in this movie, but a takeaway is like, you know, I agree. Like, I love Man of Steel. I think it's great, and I think that's something that Snyder had, was like casting Cavill and just that Superman. I really liked what they were doing with Superman, and I think he's just great as Superman. So like when he's in this movie, when he's in these big action scenes. You know, I think that's some of the best stuff in the movie. Not all the Superman stuff I think works in the movie, and feels like kind of disjointed. But in the end, you know, those big action scenes, if we're talking about the action, I think, you know, reintroducing that power that he has that you were just talking about, John, I think that really kind of, it like takes the action to another level, and allows the characters that we've seen involved in the action to like step up their game or their involvement in the scene as well. Mm-hmm. It's really cool, seeing, I felt that it was really cool seeing Aquaman and like Wonder Woman, try to fight Steppenwolf, like on that final scene on that concourse with where the mother box is at the end, and basically trying to hold off this thing while Cyborg is doing his thing.
Yeah.
And, there's all these little pieces in that scene that I think work really well. Like Cyborg's got the mother box, Barry's outside running around trying to create this thing. And, they're trying to stop him from getting to Cyborg. And I thought that all worked really, really well. And I feel like that moment that Steppenwolf gets to him and gets through them and Soups shows up, I thought was like pretty awesome, I thought. And,
that was a great scene.
Yeah. Once he's in that scene, and you see them see him and, the level of his power, I just feel like all of their power just goes up a level. Their abilities just go up a level. Wonder Woman and Aquaman working together and doing, I thought that was just awesome. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the standouts to me action-wise really kind of fall in with Superman's involvement. And I think some of the Flash stuff was really kind of cool too. Which I thought about, in the original release too. I kind of liked some of those action sequences, and he got a little more in this one. But yeah, I don't know. Like I thought the action was maybe a little scattered, but I thought the big action pieces were pretty cool. Yeah.
I like that feeling you were just describing, Steve, of like they did a good job of showing how like Wonder Woman can kind of hold him off doing this, and Aquaman can kind of hold him off doing of showing that kind of like taking turns and then getting knocked back, and we've seen that, but this was I thought a particularly well choreographed version of that with these characters who we've kind of. I mean, Wonder Woman needs to have a foe that's that powerful so she can kind of cut loose and still a fight. Aquaman needs that. Even with Superman, it's like an equal almost rather than someone he can just throw around. But when he shows up and just kind of punches him and he flies, it's not quite like a fist-pumping moment, but it is like, oh, that's a really cool thing that they build up to. Like this movie did a good job of making that moment satisfying when it's like, okay, the gang's all here,
Yeah, I just think that like what they do with Superman or what he does with Superman in most cases like works really well. Like even when he has the same moment that he had in Man of Steel, when he kind of has the takeoff moment and like everything's like floating, that stuff gives me cold chills. Like in Man of Steel, it gave me cold chills. That score, it's just it's a perfect moment for me in terms of superhero movies. And it's an abridged version of it in this, but reintroducing it in this movie, like at that crucial point in the story, again, it works. It worked on me again, even in a shortened version, mainly because I love Henry Cavill as Superman.
This movie pays off a lot of the things that people were complaining about with Zack Snyder's take on these characters, too. That would be one of my other positives that I would mention, is that the Batman in this movie is changed by his experience. So people were like, why would Batman be acting like such a villain in Batman versus Superman, kind of? And why is Superman this scary guy rather than this heroic figure to people? I feel like there's something about that feels kind of like, oh yeah, now we're seeing the result of that. We're seeing what Zack Snyder's plan was, which was definitely not to hold back on the notion that Superman is a true hero or that Batman would be like a friend to that character. This movie you see like Batman's almost like a zealot himself for the cult of Superman kind of in this movie.
It's like it's worth it all to risk it for him to be back.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess we saying go ahead? What do we say?
I feel like people are going to watch this, right? I mean, if you're not going to watch this, it is long. What someone said to me, I can't wait. I was like, my only warning is that it is every bit of a 4-hour movie. Outside of that, it's like it's what you think it's going to be, and if you're on board for it, and if, as we have been saying all this time, sure, I'd be interested to see what the finished version of Zack Snyder's idea was. This puts the movie in such a weird place, though. As someone said, neither one of them is like the official DCEU canon right now because they've kind of moved on from this stuff supposedly. I don't doubt that what you're saying might be true, Steve, though, that if the reaction to this is whatever WB wants it to be, they're going to be like, all right, we can turn this into an HBO Max series, or we can make Justice League 2 in a few years or whatever. We know the hype is there for it, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the actual numbers are, but I imagine this is going to be a heavily played film in the next few days as it's available to people. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that announcement coming. But it seems like it's almost like even Zack Snyder doesn't talk like he really expects him to. But when you mention it as a kind of flex, I'm like, maybe there is something to that he's like, let's just see. Like he knows that he got kind of petitioned back into this. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a go-ahead for me. I mean, I personally didn't feel... I mean, it definitely is a 4-hour movie, sure. But I didn't... We were joking before we recorded about, like, watching it in one sitting. And I definitely did. And, it is long, yeah. But I don't know. I feel like it felt like a long movie. It didn't feel like a 4-hour movie to me, personally.
See, it felt super long. Yeah.
Right. I've watched, like, 3-hour movies that were, like... longer to me, like harder to get through for sure. But yeah, I don't know. This is definitely like, if you're any of these conversations that we are talking about, comic book movies, Zack Snyder, the whole release Snyder Cut, whatever it is, I recommend seeing it. I mean, you're already going to see it, I'm sure. But and even if you didn't like Justice League and like you don't really care about this, like I feel like if you like Man of Steel, however you feel on BVS, like I would just be I stoke your curiosity to be like, just watch this to see what at least he was trying to do with these movies on the way out. So you can, just see it from there. But yeah, it'll be on HBO Max when this podcast comes out. So you'll have time to watch it if you can find 4 hours or break it out however you want to. So yeah, that's Zack Snyder's Justice League. You guys have anything else you need to mention before we wrap up?
No, not on my end.
No, I mean maybe next week we can talk about this if you guys have seen. I think this week is when season 2 of Servant wraps up. I've watched all of those, and I actually went back and started watching the first season with my wife, and enjoyed. Now that I know where things are going, I've enjoyed that journey a lot more. So I would just remind people that if they were waiting, now you can binge the entire second season of Servant on Apple TV Plus.
Yeah, we'll definitely check that out. Talk about that next week for sure. And again, we'll kind of circle back on South by Southwest and kind of talk about the standouts for us in checking out this year. Yeah, cool. All right, cool guys. Movieschmovie.com, pod.link/movieschmovie is a great landing page if you want to kind of try to find us on whatever platform you like listening to podcasts on. You can find it there, or you can listen to it directly on there. Facebook.com, Twitter.com, Instagram.com/movieschmovie. It's all the same everywhere. Also YouTube. We have a channel on YouTube.com/movieschmovie where these videos can be found, the video version of this podcast. And then with Falcon and the Winter Soldier starting back up, we'll be coming back to Marvel Schmarvel with new episodes of that, kind of going over that series as it airs its 6 episodes over the next couple weeks. And otherwise, good talking to you guys. And we'll touch base shortly. All right. As always, you've made our day. Thanks.
Bye.
Wonder what note that is.
Bye.
Yes.